Hello. Can you hear me at the back? Cool. I have a really quiet voice, so you have to wave if you can't hear me. This is my talk, DevTools, an animated journey. This is kind of slight. A lot of talks are like inspirational and philosophical. This is focus on the slides, and so I hope that isn't too weird. It's comprised mainly of sort of animated GIFs, well, it's actually videos, but yeah. I hope that's okay, and we'll get started. And yeah, I'd like to start out actually by saying thank you for being here, and also thank you to the organizers. Now that this is the end of the conference, I can safely say it's been kind of amazing, and the organizers have been super cool and super nice and helpful. So yeah, thank you. And I'm going to do a little about me section, but when you're looking at these slides at home, if you are, you can just skip this with that link at the bottom. And I'm going to try and focus on what I've done in the past, but specific to DevTools. I'm not just going to brag about what I've been working on. I will try and keep it relevant, so you can check it out if you're interested. This is the part where I say where I work, and I guess I also have to say we're hiring. And yeah, I mean, no, it's a nice place to work. We have pool tables and cake in the kitchen. I'm part of a program called Google Developer Experts. I don't like saying the word expert because I don't consider myself to be one, but that's what it's called. It's a program by Google where they recognize members of the community who contribute to, I don't know, web technologies, Android, whatever. And yeah, let's get started on what I've been doing that's DevTools related. I've contributed to the official documentation. This is editing styles in the DOM, so if you search for that, you'll find it. And that was like my biggest piece of writing in regards to effort, because they have a very high quality of writing over there. I wrote a few DevTools digests on HTML5 rocks, and that was to focus on DevTools commits that went into DevTools. I've written a few tutorials on NetTuts or Tuts Plus, as you may know them. And mainly DevTools, a few WebDriver stuff, and a few whatever. I think I did one on WebSockets. That was my very first one. And I've done a course on Chrome Developer Tools. That's a video-based course. It's kind of long. Well, it's not that long, but yeah, it's video-based. You have to pay for it as part of Tuts Plus. I'm not going to try and push that too much. But I am pleased to say it was the most popular code course of 2014. That's part of Tuts Plus, not courses in general. And I've done a few, like it's unlisted because it's part of this mailing list. That's it's called DevTips. I'm going to talk more about that later and try and pressurize you into subscribing. And I've given a few other talks. My last one was at Front Trends. I've done DevFest a few times. AppsWorld, the GDS, the Government Digital Service for the UK, they're super cool, and they make some of the nicest websites I've ever seen just because there's so much white space and I don't have to think about what I'm doing. So check out GovUK. I'm not pushing that for a particular reason. I just really like the style of their websites. DevTips, this is my current project, and it's I've kind of explained it in that sentence. It's a tip in the form of an animated GIF or GIF in your inbox each week, sometimes a few times a week. There's the link, or you can search for Umar DevTips, Umar with one A, that is. People have said some really nice things about that. I like not to focus on that too much. So if Luke, if you let me know your PayPal so I know where to send the money, that was a joke. Why you should subscribe, it's free. And the hope is you can grasp what I'm trying to convey through the GIF alone, because I don't want it to be a thing where you have to read text. I don't want it to be a blog post. I don't want it to be an article. I want it to be a GIF with supplementary text. That's the goal. And you also get to keep up to date with DevTools. And also, as you saw earlier, with the unlisted YouTube videos, I chuck in a few of those every now and then. I do apologize for spending a bit too long talking about what I've done in the past. That's not the point of this talk. So let's get into what this talk will be about. It's going to be about Chrome DevTools, not Firefox, not Safari. As amazing as they have been getting recently, I'm going to focus on Chrome. And we're going to have an introductory look at a few panels. And just to get a feel, how many people have used Chrome DevTools? Phew. This would have been super awkward if no one used it. And then after, we're going to go back to the panels, and I'm going to be like, and here are some new features. So we'll start out introductory, we'll then focus on the new, and then we'll end up with like a simple recap session. Yeah, let's get started. Elements panel, in particular, the DOM tree. The DOM tree is that kind of big block on the left, which I'm sure we all know what it is. It's the rendered DOM. And the most common use case, the reason I'm including this slide is simply to get into the habit of looking at these GIFs so you know what to expect throughout this talk. But we all know this. You click that magnifying icon, you click on the web page, and you inspect an element. DevTools will then take you to that place in the DOM tree, and it will show you the corresponding styles. You can edit the DOM in a number of ways. You can edit the content, the text, the HTML tag, whether it's a paragraph or a H2. You can edit the attributes. In this case, I'm just double-clicking. DevTools is smart enough to actually highlight the bit in the relevant bit that I want to edit. You can also right-click, and you get these nice contextual menus where it says add or edit the attribute. So that's good to know. We've got the styles pane, which again is, I guess, kind of the second most common use case after inspect element, because we pretty much always inspect the element and then go to styles and start editing it. And yeah, I'm just gonna walk you through a few things that you probably already know. The ability to toggle styles on and off. The ability to search. Searching is a really cool thing, because I'm constantly like scrolling through the styles pane. But yeah, you can search for this. You can type in, if you know you're looking for a color, you can type that in, and it will highlight it for you. What else do I do? Okay. I add new styles, and I don't just want to show you can add a new style. I want to show you how amazing it is that we get autocomplete for this. We don't even have to think about spelling it correctly, kind of like when you do a Google search and you get lazy and you rely on it fixing it for you. That's kind of what I do with this now. And why is Rebecca Purple a keyword? One thing, like an exercise that you can try out if you like, type in flex, as in flexbox. What will happen is you'll get autocomplete. I'm going to pause this. You'll get autocomplete. Nope, that was mute. You'll get autocomplete for the property that you selected. And the reason I'm saying this is because I've personally found it like this amazing learning mechanism to experiment between different, in this case, flexbox property values, and it's really cool. Like, you know, you can read the documentation or you can go and experiment with these things. When you use up and down arrow keys, it will apply that style in real time without you having to hit enter or without you having to do anything. So I'll continue. The thing that I'm showing here is the ability to add a new selector, and you might be asking, like, why would I want to do that? What's the point? And we're going to get into that later when we look at workspaces. DOM breakpoints is a way to debug from the outside in. And what I mean by that is if you're working on a web application, you roughly know where actions happen, and I'm talking about JavaScript here. This has nothing to do with CSS. You roughly know where things are happening, in what file, what line number. But what happens when it's a production website? So in this case, I found to-do MVC, a website where you can add to-dos. Web page on the left, DevTools on the right, and I'm going to add some to-dos. And I want to figure out, just out of curiosity, how these are being added to the DOM. Now to do that, I'm going to right-click on the parent node, and I'm going to say, I want you to break on what's called a subtree modification, which is like a fancy way of saying when the DOM changes. And by checking that, by enabling this feature, DevTools will say, okay, I know this portion of the DOM has just modified, and I know the line of JavaScript which caused that to happen, so I'm going to show you. And this is like super powerful when, again, when you need to debug from the outside in, you don't know the code that you're looking at. And this is what I've done. And I love the fact that it takes me straight to the inner HTML line that made that change. I think that's very powerful. It's a very powerful workflow. I did say this is something to do on production websites, and you might have made the connection that production websites tend to have minified code. That is a problem. You can do pretty printing in JavaScript, but I don't know, it does get trickier with minified code. Viewing event listeners is another way to debug from the outside in. To-do MVC has a little cross. That cross deletes the to-do item. I'm trying to inspect it, but I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect the li, the label? Yeah, the li. And I'm going to trigger a hover state. This is a thing you can do in DevTools. You can say, pretend that you're being hovered upon. So I trigger the hover state. The cross always appears. Now I can continue with what I was trying to actually show you, which is the ability to show all the event listeners for that cross. There's a dedicated pane called the event listeners pane. It categorizes all the events, click, key press, key up. And what is kind of nice is you can right click and say, show me where you exist, sort of thing, like show me your function. And that's what I'm doing here. You get taken to the sources panel. In this case, maybe not as useful because they've used a dispatch event or whatever wrapper, and it's showing me that. But with framework blackboxing, read about it if you don't know about it already. That should improve the process where you're able to like black box certain scripts. So it won't show you that, or show you the line of code where you actually registered the event, and that's super useful with jQuery, Angular, whatever. The network panel, I would argue, is maybe the second most used panel, possibly. I think after Elements, it's definitely used quite heavily. We all know about recording and looking at the details, and I'm going to show it just to make sure we're on the same page. I reload the web page with recording turned on. You get a nice list of all the resources that were requested during that session. For every resource, you're able to click on it and see more details. You can see request and response headers. You can get a preview of the resource. You can see the cookies that were sent or maybe sent back by the server. You can even see timing information. I don't like to use this view for the timing information. I prefer to use the overall sort of view because it feels a bit more contextual. That's this bit. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's good for performance and finding out what's being downloaded when. Searching and filtering, these are two separate features, which I'm going to show in one clip. I'm going to show filtering first. Don't scroll through the network panel, just don't do it. It takes too long, and you always end up getting lost. Just filter for what you need. You can control, I think it's command, maybe control click actually. You can control click to select multiple filters, and look at the bottom, the status bar auto updates. And now I'm going to show the searching part, which I think is amazing, because you can type in these queries and it will auto suggest the values based on the current recording, if I explained that okay. And yeah, it's super cool. Like, this isn't information that you can't get, it's just better surfacing it for you through this searching technique. And I found out this recently, there's a larger than query, which is really cool. You can find out what resources are bigger than 100 bytes, 110K, a megabyte. Well, you can type in whatever you want, actually. That's just auto-suggesting some values for you. The sources panel, I've got a feeling like we know it exists, but we don't use it as much as we probably should, or we don't know of its capabilities because, I don't know, maybe we tried it once and it didn't work for us. I'm going to try and convince you to reconsider it. This is Snippets, and I'm going to show this first just because it's so standalone. It's got nothing to do with anything. I see Snippets as bookmarklets, if you remember them. So you go to the sources panel. You click on Snippets, you right-click, say New File. You make a new file. In my case, I'm going to make a performance file. I found a DevTools snippet, which is, it just console logs a bunch of performance metrics. And when you do that, you hit Command-S, and now you've got a snippet that's going to persist like forever across that Chrome session. And you can right-click and say Run, and it's just a nice thing. Now, there's a repository called DevTools Snippets. If you search for that, you'll find it. And it's got all these nice utilities, practical use cases that you might want to put into snippets. Source editing and local modifications. This is the ability to make changes in the sources panel, essentially, to change your source code. Okay, first of all, keep in mind you can command click or control click on a property or property value. You'll get taken straight to the point in the sources panel. And from this point, at this point, within the sources panel, you can start making changes. But what's cool is you see it reflect the web page in real time, which I kind of like. So I'm going to change it to a super readable yellow. And what do? I think I add a new selector next. Yeah, it's just to show you that you're not limited to like minor subtle changes. You can treat this like a text editor. You can make changes to your heart's content, and for the most part, it does work. It will reflect in your web page in real time without you having to hit Command or Control S. don't know why I rotate everything. Workspaces, like everything I've been showing you so far within the sources panel, apart from snippets, is meant to build up to workspaces. And workspaces is like this ability to make changes, if I was to simplify it, and have them persist to disk, is how I would sort of summarize that. Now, these are my slides. These are web-based slides. I've got them open. I'm working on it. And I want to change it to say workspaces is, what do I say? I think I say is pretty cool. Now, who can guess what's going to happen when I reload the page? Yes? Yes, it's going to disappear because I'm editing like the rendered DOM, which is, yeah, that's not really what you want to edit. You don't want to edit the rendered DOM because that doesn't reflect your source code. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to enable workspaces. You do need to invest some time to get this working, but hopefully I can convince you it's worth trying out. Right-click in the sources panel, add folder to workspace. You'll be prompted with like the browser file dialog picker, and I'm going to choose frontend Zurich 2015, which is my folder. Now, DevTools will add that folder that I've just selected in the sources panel, and I'm going to find the file I want to edit, and I'm going to say, hey, I need to teach you how you map to my web page, if that makes sense. So I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but you know what's on your file system and what's in the browser is this kind of a disconnect, and you need to teach DevTools about that mapping. That's what I just did. I've now got my HTML. This is the HTML as it is on my file system. This has nothing to do with the browser. The one difference being it understands the connection. I make the change, I hit Command S. The browser actually reloads and my change persists. So this is editing, working directly in the browser, which I think is super cool. And just to prove to you that it's working, I drag in Sublime Text, and you can see it's persisted my change straight into that file itself. I'm going to pause here because I have to give I have to explain something really quickly. Now, if I was to show you that exact same workflow for CSS, would that be surprising? Because I would argue, no, it's not. Because we've seen it working for HTML, why wouldn't it work for CSS? The answer is it does work for CSS. There's no problems there. But I want to show you editing Sass. The browser doesn't understand Sass. Sass needs to be compiled. And, you know, the browser has no idea what Sass actually is. And this is a workflow where we can edit Sass as CSS, or it can be less. It's not specific to Sass. And we're going to somehow make the browser understand the changes that we're making. Settings, general. You go to the sources section and you check auto reload generated CSS. Now, if you say that to yourself, you can probably guess what I might be like getting at here, like what might be accomplished by doing this. So I've got Sass up, got a little CSS variable there, sorry, a Sass variable, and I'm going to change that into a different color. What's happening in the background is the following. It sees my change. It saves that to disk because of Workspaces. When it saves that to disk, I've got a grunt or gulp task, whatever, running in the background. You can see that in the terminal. It's seeing, okay, your file just changed. Therefore, I know I need to compile a new CSS file. DevTools is kind of being smart and it's saying, do you know what? I know you're editing Sass or CoffeeScript or ES6 code. I'm going to guess you have a compiled version of that same file, and I'm going to look for it, and I'm going to try and like watch it for changes. And that's exactly what it does. It watches the file. I think it's like it's a polling technique, I don't know. But it watches that file for changes. It re-injects the code into the browser, and it just works, and it's great. And you don't need to reload the browser to get that working, which I really like. This is not perfect. When I was like doing this, when I was making this demo, I had Workspaces working, and it was great. And then every now and then I would tweak something in a sort of, in an edge casey sort of way. And it would like, I'd get so sad because everything would break and DevTools would get into a state where it had to be refreshed. And then I would lose all the changes I've been making. So it's not perfect. I do want to throw that out there. I wouldn't say you can use this with a frustration-free experience. So naturally, moving on, we've got live editing of HTML we saw, CSS. I think the next step is JavaScript. I'm going to go back to the to-do MVC page. I'm going to add some to-dos. And here is the goal. Here is what I want to prove to you can be done. I want to prefix my to-dos, my to-do list. I want to prefix it with a string live edit. Now this is not CSS, this is JavaScript. Things are a little more complicated. Yet, from our point of view, they don't have to be, because DevTools does make this quite easy. First of all, I'm going to do what you've already seen. I'm going to break on a subtree modification because I need to find the line of code which inserts something into the DOM, because I want to change that line of code. And what's happened? I'm just showing there's a DOM breakpoints pane, kind of FYI. That's a little thing that shows you all the breakpoints you've registered. I'm going to start typing and trigger the breakpoint, find the line of code which executes. Now I could carry on my talk like from this file, but I wanted to show you another feature of the DevTools, which is the ability to navigate through the call stack, which is very powerful if you think about what this gives you. And feature, a cool thing number 2 I wanted to show you is these inline variables. Can you see those beige, what color is it? Like creamy things. Those are inline variables at that point in time, which I think is very powerful. Anyway, let's move back to our original goal, which is to prefix my to-do with the string live edit. I found the point where the controller, the JavaScript controller, hands off the string to the model, and I think that's an appropriate place to make my string change. Now, even I'm paused at a breakpoint. Oh no, do I do something else? Yeah, I do something else here. I make a new breakpoint simply because I found the exact place where I want to make my changes, and I kind of, maybe to get closure, I want to like start from scratch. And so I've set a brand new breakpoint, I've re-triggered it, and just like that, without any sort of workspaces or anything, I'm just going to start typing in new JavaScript code, even I'm paused at a breakpoint. And I'm going to change the value of title. I'm going to say title equals string plus title. And I just hit Command S. That was super important when I just did that, Command S or Control S, because that triggers DevTools to re-inject your code into the V8 engine. And I'll get back to that in a second. I'm going to resume script execution. And just like that, it's actually, do I have a laser? Yeah. It's prefixed my to-do item with the string live edit. And that was all done while paused at a breakpoint. I'm going to close DevTools just to prove this really is working. I'm going to get rid of those to-dos. I haven't reloaded the browser at all. Woohoo! So that's working. And that's like, I think that's a very powerful workflow. I don't want to downplay the engineering effort that went into this. And I did want to kind of touch upon how it works. Your raw text changes are injected into the V8 engine. It looks at the new code that you wrote and it compares it against the existing code. And it says, right, you changed lines 1, 5, and 6. This is a simplification. It takes those lines that you changed and it creates a patch and it patches the old version. And from that, it then, I guess it converts it back into bytecode and, I don't know, reloads it while in the V8 engine. That's how that works. And it doesn't work 100% of the time with more complex use cases. But for debugging, I mean, this means if you wanted to, you could, while paused at a JavaScript error, you can fix the error in real time and continue script execution, and it would be as if that error never occurred. I'm going to skip the timeline panel because I'm thinking about time constraints. If we do have time at the end, I'll get back to it, but I kind of have a few more interesting things to show. The timeline panel stuff is still in the slides, so you can have a look at it in your own time. Yeah, audits panel. Nah, let's not do the audits panel because I think it's kind of outdated. No disrespect to anyone, but I think there are more up-to-date tools like PageSpeed Insights or webpage test, so maybe use those. And yeah, that was all the sort of introductory material to the Chrome DevTools. Now we're going to look at the new stuff. This isn't all new. This is some just lesser-known features which you might not have already known about. And I have to give a warning so that I don't upset Paul Irish too much. But you're not allowed to go away and try these and discover it doesn't work and then complain to Paul Irish on Twitter. Don't do that. I'll get in trouble. I'm kidding. It's just, yeah, I think people can sometimes not realize what it means to be experimental. So it's important to make that distinction and just understand that these things can change. They can disappear the next day. We'll start with the timeline panel. Even I did skip the introductory section to the timeline panel, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up. If you don't, if it's not obvious what I'm talking about, I would recommend to like keep it in the back of your mind, go away and read about the timeline panel, like make some recordings, so hopefully things will add up. I'm going to make a new recording, and the thing that I'm showing here, the new thing that I'm showing, is this aggregated details, like pane, and this is really cool. It shows you, based on the URL, what is causing certain timeline records to execute, which you may or may not be familiar with. And this gives me the ability to say, what, like everything from reddit.com is taking all the time, or even, and this is where it gets cool, even this Chrome extension is actually eating up all my resources. So this allows you to identify these sorts of things. You don't have to group by URL, you can group by subdomain. Maybe you're requesting lots of assets from a third-party advertising provider. You now have stats, you now have metrics to go away with and be like, they are absolutely affecting our performance. And this is the default grouping, just based on the record itself, whether that's paint or recalculate style. Now you all thought I was going to leave audits panel in a ditch today, but no, because audits panel is really cool when you use a Chrome extension to make it better. And it's called the Accessibility Developer Tools, and it adds what's called an accessibility audit. And when you install it, it's a Chrome extension, go to the audits panel and you just have a new audit. And I think it's like really nice. I really do. I think it's, I'm not a huge accessibility person. I would like to be, and I think this can help me get to that point. And I would advise anyone here to have a look at it as well. In this case, it's telling me that, what is it? Images shouldn't be used as backgrounds, which I think is valid. It shows you the DOM node in question as well. And it tells you some other interesting stuff. Yeah, it's got contrast ratio recommendations, which, again, like the science behind it, I'm not too in tune with. I'm sure some of you probably know more than me. But yeah, it's based on contrast ratios that your text should follow based on the background color. And I think it's really good that it's there. I wasn't sure what category to put this in. This is kind of a random, like just a thing. It's called the promise inspector. I've got a little promise in the sources panel, and I'm going to resolve it after a period of time because of set timeout. The promise inspector isn't like this new functionality. I mean, you can get this just from setting a breakpoint, but it's all about convenience. It will show you the promise that you registered, and it will tell you when it resolved. It gives you a little call stack where you can sort of find the line of code where it did resolve, no, where it did settle or where it was created. You can show it in the console panel to understand what value it was resolved with. The network panel has been getting like some updates which I really like. One of my favorites is Filmstrip. So we're going to go to the Shazam.com homepage, and we're going to record a network session. Now I've toggled with that little thing, that one there. I've toggled the Filmstrip view, and you get this nice web page test if you've used it, like Filmstrip, right at the top, which you can scroll through, and you can actually like show people. You can show your product manager how your web page is loading, and yeah, the screenshots actually match with the timeline recording. So if you click on a screenshot, it will be like, that was at whatever 6 seconds. This is where it matches in the network recording. Custom throttling profiles. Well, this is, I'm going to point out two things. First of all, you can throttle. If you didn't know that, that's a thing that you can do now. But second of all, as you might have guessed, you can make a custom preset. And to do that, you say add custom profile, you add a custom throughput and latency. I'm trying to match mine to my train journey. Finally, you add the profile, you go back to the network panel. You can also trigger this from device mode, but I haven't shown anything to do with device mode in this talk. And yeah, your new preset is right there. So this is kind of cool. I would advise you to do something that's meaningful to you as opposed to using the preset. Or rather try both, see what your web pages load like with both of these presets. To go back to the dev tips thing I was mentioning yesterday, this is something I posted to go back to the dev tips thing I was talking about earlier, this is something I posted yesterday. This is the ability to block certain requests, which is very, very powerful. This is important because we need to understand how web pages perform and how they load with CSS and JavaScript like blocked, sent into a black hole. In this case, as you can see, Twitter works very, very well without CSS. No, I shouldn't pick on a particular website, but yeah, I know there's like lots of debate around this. Maybe if you're building a single page application, maybe your use case is different, I don't know. Elements panel, I think, has been getting some of the nicer improvements, definitely. First of all, we've got a DOM toolbar. This is super minor, this isn't a big deal. But as part of this clip, I am going to show you something that's super cool. But first of all, the DOM toolbar. It's just better surfacing some of the existing DOM functionality, like the ability to trigger hover states. It just lives in a new place right now. But what I want to show is the ability to toggle this layout editor, which is super experimental. I triggered it. You get these green handlers like everywhere. And you might be able to guess what happens if you start dragging one of these, which I think, I think this could rapidly change the way people make websites, but more importantly, the way people are introduced to making websites. I think being able to send someone to a production site and have them make these changes and then possibly like see the changes you've been making and send it off to a developer to actually apply, I think that's really cool. And there's lots of potential. So I'm making my subscribe button here bigger to trick you all into subscribing. This is a few features I've kind of compressed into one clip. First of all, you can click on a color and you'll get this new little color picker tool. You can start eyedropping colors from the web page if that's what you want to do. By the way, this is web page specific, so this isn't like your mouse can't move outside of the browser. But second cool thing is you now get these color palettes, which aren't just any old color palettes. These are generated based on your style sheet, based on the colors DevTools finds within your style sheets, which is very cool and allows you to just select whatever colors. If you don't like your own page colors, you can start experimenting with new material design colors, which they've added. You can add a custom color palette as well. And again, another experimental feature. This is called the contrast line ratio. If you think about that for a second, you might be able to guess. It's showing you the point at which your text is unreadable based on the color of the text and based on the background color. And this is like a huge step, a huge win for accessibility. And it's just amazing that they're adding this in. Easing previews and the cubic Bezier editor. Again, kind of showing a few things here. We all use ease. We're all guilty of it. Don't use it. I don't mind. It looks a bit bland. If you click on it, you get what's called the cubic Bezier editor. You can start dragging those handlers, start dragging them all around the page. And you also get a preview, that little ball at the top. You get to see what it looks like. But let's face it, we're going to play around with it and realize we can't recreate anything that looks good. So that's why they've also added presets. And presets are, fast out, linear in. They've got a few that you can use. And when you select one, just like with the color picker tool, it will add itself to the style sheet. Or rather, it will change the place where it's defined, where you originally clicked. So these do persist in that sense. But the real trick is to set up workspaces so it saves it to your file. The animation inspector is, this is another nice one. This is CSS presets, a little CSS thing that has a bunch of cool animations you can start using. And I want to figure out how these animations work. So I'm going to open up the animation inspector. When I open this up, it's breaking down the animatable properties for me. Don't worry, the video is just sped up here because I got a bit carried away. And you can start dragging with the handlers. You can start dragging the animations, and this affects the animation delay and the animation duration. And you can scrub, you can play it back, you can repeat, you can change the speed of it. And yeah, I'm sure this is going in a good direction. Right now it's kind of still very basic in what it offers you, but it's a very cool feature nonetheless. And a little recap. I know this sounds super obvious, and I definitely don't mean to sound patronizing, but I think we should all spend time to get to know our browser developer tools, whether that's Chrome, Safari, whatever, because a lot of these features I've shown do need a time investment. So maybe the color picker tool is something that you can just use because someone told you to, and you don't really need much introduction to it. Whereas with Workspaces, you sort of need to sit down and figure out how it can integrate with your workflow. So do invest the time and like become familiar with what it offers. If you decide it's not right for you, that's okay. Like I don't use a lot of DevTools features. I just stick to Sublime because not everything works as smoothly as I would like. But yeah, I think it's important to be familiar with what it can offer. And also with Workspaces, you will absolutely mess up a number of times, like each one of these kids, because it's, yeah, it's definitely, it's tricky to get working. I love the last kid. Why? Yeah, if you're using a compiler, transpiler, whatever, if you're CoffeeScript, Babel, Less, SAS, these things do generate source maps. The community has been very active in making source map compatible tools, so do try this out and again, decide if it's worth it for you. And to finish up, I think we all, or some of us, we work in teams and we're aware of our peers' workflows. So if you find maybe your peers or your colleagues are using a workflow which is possibly outdated, they're still console logging, for example, try and show them what it means to breakpoint. Yeah, show them these features and share it, because that's important and that gets everyone like understanding and accelerating with modern workflows. And I've tried to present a few like user stories, I guess, just to maybe convince you if you are a product manager or designer, whatever. So if you are a product manager, open up 2 tabs and then do network Filmstrip and do your site and a competitor and then feel bad if your site is slower, because yeah, maybe that's a way to encourage you to use it. If you do QA or QE and you write like lots of browser automated tests, I didn't show it, but DevTools can actually generate these CSS friendly selectors for you. XPath is kind of dying now, and a lot of browser automation frameworks need CSS selectors to make like assertions on the DOM, and that can be generated for you if you're not familiar with how to write CSS selectors yourself. If you're into DevOps, look at your page weight, look at your asset resources, flag it when you find out that cache headers are not being returned correctly because of a misconfigured CDN. If you're into design, try out the layout editor. I think it's fantastic. And I don't think I showed this. There's something called local modifications in DevTools. Search for it. It'll give you a diff of the changes you've been making, like kind of like a git diff. So a red line means you deleted something, green means you added. They can combine layout editor with this and be like, I know exactly what I've changed. I'm going to take this patch and send it to someone who can actually add it to the code, or they can do it themselves. That's cool. And yeah, play around with the material design color palette. I did Deep Dream on DevTools. It's kind of cool. I don't know what relevance this has to do with anything. I don't know why I showed that. If I can help, I would love to. Workshops, training, talks, more talks. If you are not interested in any of that, feel free to search, or you'll find it from the DevTips homepage. Feel free to make new issues on the issue tracker for things you would like to learn about. I didn't cover console panel. I skipped timeline. Profiles is another panel, a huge panel I missed on. So if you would like to see more of that, you can make a little ticket or whatever. You can vote tickets up or down. And yeah, I could try and make some more of these tips. So my name is Umar, Umar, but there's 2 A's for Twitter. Someone always takes it with 1 A, and same for my domain. So, but you can also search for Umar DevTips if you want to find it. And yeah, I know why you all came here. You all wanted to see this GIF, so I hope you're happy. There it is.
Thank you very much, Umar. Any day that ends on that is a good day. We've got, we don't have a signal yet from downstairs, right, that we're not done? Because as soon when they're done, I'm going to be dashing down there. We're going to be doing the closing remarks, and they'll be streamed here. So don't go anywhere, because all of the closing remarks are still to come. But so we have some time for some questions until I get the signal that they're wrapped up downstairs. What do we have? I thought that was fantastic, by the way. I haven't looked at DevTools in a while, but I used to use them. It's been about 4 years, and they've come a long way. There's lots of cool stuff in there. Ooh. I know we've got questions. I see you thinking. Yep, there we got 2 already. You, sir. Questions about what do you think about the mobile simulation in the console?
Yeah, purely because of time constraints, I didn't show anything to do with device mode, as it's called. But please do try it out. It's super cool. It's just great. You can trigger all these device presets, and I think I have to reload the page to trigger it. But I can see what it looks like on an iPhone 6. It looks terrible. And you can trigger throttling. You can do all sorts. But to actually answer your question in terms of what I think about it, I think it's possible that it encourages people to do, is it called adaptive? Where you do these media queries based on specific devices. I don't think that's healthy. I think fluidity, to the extent that we can do it, we can't always do it, is a much more healthy approach.
Does it? I see a slider on the side, on the right side there. Does that allow you to just so it can still be used for that, just without using the presets?
Yes.
Yeah, without relying on the presets.
You can always resize the browser as well.
Does it require? Well, it doesn't require reloading. It is reacting there. I guess it.
Yeah.
If you were running something that included testing something that included breakpoints in the CSS, it would the media queries would react.
Yes.
Yeah, it's useful to have right in line, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Where was the next question? There, you, sir. Like async as in asynchronous? Okay, so there was a checkbox somewhere. I didn't even see that. Good eyes. So so the question is, what is it? Why is it there? Why is there an async checkbox? What does it do? Why does it exist? Why is it wasting screen real estate?
The the asynchronous checkbox is present in 2 places. One where you mentioned, and also here. And it's basically to do with the call stack DevTools gives you. You might notice if you try and look at a call stack for synchronous code, it makes sense. But if you look at a call stack for asynchronous code, it gets weird, right? And it doesn't know what bit to show you. By triggering that, it's not perfect, but it does a much better job. And it's all to do, as I understand it, it's to do with the call stack that it shows to you, and it shows you how asynchronous operations, which triggered something else, it will annotate that into the call stack. Good question. Again, I think it's to do with the call stack, that if you can somehow break on it, and it will show you, it can annotate your call stacks. But yes, you're right, promises are asynchronous to some extent. Yeah. Sorry, I don't really answer.
Requires further digging and investigation. Next question. You started putting your hand up. I'm not going to let you get away with it. Oh, yeah. What version of Chrome are you showing us?
I'm using... Yep. So I'm using the latest... Well, to show these slides, I'm using Stable. To make the demos of all of what you saw, I used Chrome Canary. Canary is auto-updating, so you shouldn't have any issues with what version do I use. Now, to enable the experiments, if you just search for DevTools experiments, you'll find out how to enable it. It's quite straightforward. But now that you've asked me, I also have to give the disclaimer where I say, think about why they're experimental, and it's because they are subject to change. So, but yeah. Yes, the hope is it will make it into stable at some point in the future. But yeah, to answer your question is Canary, enable hidden experiments, and based on what you've enabled, you'll be able to find it.
Next question. I saw another hand starting to go up. Did you wimp out now? Another question. Ah, fair enough. We still have time. Do we have any tools that allow us to unminify the code for debugging?
Yep.
Good question.
First of all, DevTools, I don't know if I should even encourage it because it's not the most amazing thing. jQuery. So DevTools has pretty printing. Oh, hey. I guess that kind of, yeah, that's what you're asking. But there is something better, which is source maps. I think source maps are the way forward with this. Because this, you still get these crazy minification techniques, which you still have to debug.
So I'll ask the stupid question. I'll be the one in the room. What are source source maps? Someone mentioned that earlier, and there was almost a question from the back of the room, like in a previous talk, but it just got missed. Yep. So yeah.
So if ever you turn your raw source code into something else, for example, Sass or Less or whatever, CoffeeScript, Babel, or other ES6 code into ES5 code, if ever you do that, you kind of lose the mapping between line 1 of the compiled file and line 1 of your source file. And to solve this, there's this source maps, I think, is it a specification? I don't know. It's becoming an official thing. And the idea is any tool, any compiler can integrate source maps and be like, right, every time I compile your file for you, I'm going to generate alongside it a source map. And the source map can be read by DevTools. So DevTools is fully compatible with it, and it's kind of instructions. It tells DevTools, hey, line 5 of their source file maps to line 20 of the concatenated file.
Okay, yes, and you'd recommend that over prettifying the rendered
yeah, it does mean you have to have
production markup.
Source maps in production.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's 2 answers to your question. Is that your hand up because you have a question, or your hand up because they're done downstairs? They are on Q&A. Okay, good. So I think let's have one more question, because then I'll have time to get downstairs, and Stephen and I can finish everything up. One more. I know you want to ask something. Someone. See, you're stretching back there. I could say that if this was an auction, you would have just won. Anything? No, it's okay if we don't. I'm sure you'll be around for additional questions if anyone happens to have them. Thank you very much. You've ended the day brilliantly. Big round of applause for Umar.